What's good, people? Thank you for stopping by to visit the channel for the preview of the National Championship. If you want to stay updated in the world of college football, if you have not done so already, please click that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and select all so you won't miss out on another video. Also, like the video, it helps the channel grow. Share the video and give me your score prediction in the comment section below, even if you agree or disagree with my score prediction. Now, throughout the weirdness of the 2020 college football season, we have arrived to the end, and we have the two best teams in the country playing for the national championship in Alabama and Ohio State. Both teams won in impressive fashion, with Alabama taking care of Notre Dame and Ohio State eviscerating Clemson. Now, usually we dive into the tail of the tape of advanced metrics of the two teams, but since we are in the postseason, I like to dive into the season-long resumes of both teams, compare and contrast the schedules based on the advanced metrics, the average defenses, offenses, best wins, and the opponent's similarity relative to their schedules. Since Ohio State's schedule is different from Alabama, I will remove the 5 worst teams on Alabama's schedule and compare them based on a 7-game schedule instead of the 12 games they have played. So without further ado, we're going to begin with number 1 Alabama. When you remove the 5 worst teams and go with the 7 teams on Alabama's schedule, it is an absolute gauntlet compared to their 12-game schedule, where their average F+ opponent equivalent is Memphis at 64th and their average SP+ equivalent is Nebraska at 31st, but that would still be considered good marks. After their convincing win against Notre Dame, the Crimson Tide has 4 wins against the F+ top 25, which 3 of those wins came against the top 15, Florida, Georgia, and also Notre Dame. The removal of the 5 teams on Alabama's schedule gives them a top 20 offensive SP+ equivalent in Oregon and a top 30 defensive SP+ equivalent of Appalachian State. We have some interesting comparisons, with the only tenuous comparison that is Texas A&M's rush offense, since they are ranked 25th and Ohio State is ranked in the top 5 in that metric. However, the Aggies have the best yard per carry average on Alabama's schedule prior to Ohio State at 5.45 yards per carry, and the Crimson Tide defense held the Aggies to 115 yards on 3.8 yards per carry. Surprisingly, it was the lowest rushing total the Aggies had all year. Florida showing up as a passing offense that's resembling Ohio State should concern Alabama fans here, even though schematically Florida poses a different threat than the Buckeyes. But Kyle Trask and the Gator offense threw for 10.2 yards per attempt and 408 yards and 3 touchdowns. It should be noted that the Buckeye passing attack is ranked in the top 5 in my advanced metrics, so the Crimson Tide secondary better be ready for the challenge. Now, on the offensive side, if you're Alabama, you are liking your chances here with Notre Dame's rush defense and the Ole Miss passing defense showing up. The Irish rush defense is a solid unit, but the Crimson Tide ran for 140 yards at 5.6 yards per carry, including a highlight reel from Najee Harris that almost broke Twitter. Against Ole Miss, Alabama did some illegal things that should not be spoken of against that secondary. Mac Jones threw for 417 yards at 13 yards per attempt with an 87.5% completion percentage. Despite playing 7 games, the Buckeyes have played the second best schedule between the 4 playoff participants, with 3 wins against the F+ top 25. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that doesn't make sense, but this is going to help. The Buckeyes had 5 out of their 7 opponents ranked in the top 50, with no opponents ranked worse than 100. The only blemish I see on Ohio State's schedule is their offensive slate was not nearly as strong as their defensive slate, as the Buckeyes faced one team ranked worse than 80th in defensive SP+, and no teams ranked worse than 100 in that metric. This is a quality team, regardless of how many games they played. Pop quiz, hotshots. You have a team on your schedule you just eviscerated, but they aren't nearly as good as Alabama is from a passing standpoint and from a pass defense standpoint. What do? You beat them by 20. Clemson's pass offense is ranked 20th, which is the highest ranked team that is currently on the Buckeye schedule, and Trevor Lawrence threw for 400 yards at 8.3 yards per attempt. Clemson's pass defense, which is ranked an abysmal 38th based off of Clemson standard, did not stop Justin Fields from taking apart that secondary, as Fields threw for 385 yards at 13.8 yards per attempt. And I will talk more about this game later with the advanced box score. So now that we've talked about the schedules and the resumes between the 2 title participants, what do we know? Well, in terms of overall quality, this is about as good as it gets. This is number 1 versus number 2, according to Bill Connolly's SP+ ranking, and number 1 versus number 2 in overall F+ rankings. We have people bellyache about the system every single year, but no matter how hard you complain, it eventually shakes out in the end. These are the 2 best teams in the country. Ohio State will be Alabama's 4th team in the top 10 in SP+, and Alabama will be Ohio State's 2nd team in the top 10. SP Plus gives Alabama a 60% win probability, and they open as a 7-point favorite in Vegas. I have no idea what Brian Kelly was smoking here when he said his team was getting close. I'm not sure what game he was watching on the sideline, but Alabama treated Notre Dame like they were Missouri in the opening game. Once Alabama got to a comfortable lead, the game was put in neutral, and the goal was to get out of Dodge and bleed the clock dry. Alabama could have scored whenever they got ready. Yeah, Notre Dame, quote-unquote, held Alabama to under 35 points, but if we're really being honest, Alabama ran 55 plays and 24 of them were first downs. If Alabama called a play, it was a really good chance that the play was going to work, as evident by that insane first quarter where Alabama had a 92% success rate. They also had a plus 17 success rate delta, and 27% of the game was in garbage time. If that classifies as getting close, we may need to reevaluate some things in this country. So everyone, pop quiz. I want you to point to where the game got out of hand for Clemson. I'm not going to give you time to answer, but if you said the second quarter, you are absolutely correct. That second quarter was a masterclass piece of finishing on both offense and defense. The Justin Fields hit from James Skalski seemed to ignite the Buckeyes. Yes, it was targeting. I don't know why people are arguing the fact that it was not targeting. It clearly was. But that play ignited the Buckeyes, and they played with more energy after Fields scored that touchdown that already put them ahead by 14. In any event, this game highlighted a glaring advantage Ohio State had against other teams on their schedule. They can control the line of scrimmage, and it was evident on 3rd and 9 with 1 minute and 46 seconds to go in the first half. This is an obvious passing situation, and they ran the ball with Trey Sermon and got 10 instead. The offensive line for Ohio State bullied the Clemson defensive line Friday night, and the Ohio State defensive line did some nasty things to Clemson's offensive line. Even though the success rates between both teams were relatively equal, Ohio State was not going to be denied in that game. It was an outstanding performance for the quote-unquote 11th ranked team in the country. When Alabama has the ball, I fully expect Ohio State to be challenged on the perimeter. This is not the Clemson offense they're going up against on Monday night. Clemson's offense was solid based on the advanced metrics, but Alabama is elite in the major categories, and it starts with their triplets who just so happen to be in the top 5 in the Heisman ballot. If you try to play Alabama straight up and don't account for an extra man in the box, they will gladly give the ball to Najee Harris. Drop an extra defender in the box, leave man-to-man coverage on the outside, DeVonta Smith's going to get open. Try to bracket Smith over the top and try to disguise shell coverage. Quarterback Mac Jones will find another capable receiver. This is not your 2018 offense where they lived and died off the deep shots. They are ruthlessly efficient. They take whatever the defense gives them, and they have been challenged this season. Once this offense gets rolling, no pun intended, by the way, your offense better be prepared to keep up. I must mention this. They are going against the best defensive line that we'll face all season long. Ohio State's defensive line is no joke. They are deep, talented, and they're flat out mean. Jeez, could you imagine if they had Chase Young for this year? But without Chase Young, the Buckeyes are still allowing 85% of their opponent's rushing average. If Ohio State can disrupt Alabama's offensive line on a consistent basis, that is where Alabama will struggle. If Alabama's offensive line can handle Ohio State's front to a stalemate and give Mac Jones time to scan the field, given how Ohio State's secondary is allowing 106% of their opponent's passing average, this is going to get uncomfortable for Ohio State quick. Keep in mind, the Ohio State defensive line has not faced an offensive line ranked higher than 39th all season long, which was Nebraska. Alabama is currently ranked 13th. When Ohio State has the ball, there is a slight edge I'm going to give to the Buckeyes. I don't care how many games they played this year. This is an elite offense, and they have embarrassed their competition. Justin Fields had a slight funk mid-season, but if the Clemson game is any indicator of where he's at mentally, then Alabama better strap up, because Fields is going to bring it. But the Buckeye passing offense is going up against a stout Alabama secondary. Patrick Surtain II is the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and not too many quarterbacks will attempt or have attempted to throw to his side. The Crimson Tide pass defense is allowing 87% of their opponent's passing average, and they will challenge throws in tight coverage. Where I can see the Bucs have success here is the ground game. The Buckeye offensive line ragdolled Clemson, and the Tigers have a top 10 defensive line. The defensive line from Alabama is not the stout front from a few years ago, but they do rotate a lot of bodies. If Trey Sermon can get going like he has been going on the last few weeks, Alabama could be in some serious trouble if the Ohio State offensive line starts to assert themselves, and I will trust Ryan Day over Alabama's defensive coordinator Pete Golding any day of the week. Based on Fields' health, I would look for some max protection blocking schemes to give him time to scan the field and find Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson streaking down the field. The computer model has Alabama winning this game by a unique score of 44-34. Another thing to note is the over-under was set for 76. The model is predicting Alabama will gain 7.94 yards per play, which is 101% of their usual yard per play average. Alabama comes into this game averaging 7.84 yards per play, and when you remove the defensive scores or special team scores, Alabama is averaging 45.2 points a game on offense. For Ohio State, the model has them gaining 6.59 yards per play, which is 88% of their yard per play average. Based on their offensive scores, removing non-offensive touchdowns, the Buckeyes are averaging a pretty darn good 40 points a game as well. The offensive firepower that is going to be on display will be incredible. Alabama has proven they can cook your defense any way you want it. Whether you want to be filleted, chopped, sliced, diced, grilled, baked, doesn't matter. Ohio State has given defenses my brother's favorite pizza the works all season long. This game is going to come down to the following matchups: Ohio State's offensive line against Alabama's defensive line, and Alabama's wide receivers versus Ohio State secondary. These are the perceived strengths versus weaknesses each team has on each other. If Ohio State's offensive line dominates and their wide receivers win their share of battles against Alabama, they're going to win this one. Alabama's defensive line wins their share of battles against Ohio State's offensive line, and their wide receiver core treats Ohio State pretty much like they did every secondary on their schedule. Alabama's got this one. Another item to note, there have been some rumblings on the Alabama side that Jaylen Waddle will return to practice. Now, we don't know what type of percentage of health we're looking at, but it is an interesting development to say the least, and Nick Saban would have not leaked this information out if he felt Waddle was not going to play in the game. He takes practice and preparation serious as a heart attack. If Jaylen Waddle can practice, the staff believes he can make a valuable contribution. Another thing to keep an eye on is the health of Justin Fields. Homeboy took a serious hit, and he is going to say all the right things this week, but you have to think they are going to take extra precautions with him. And granted, he threw the ball over them mountains against Clemson in the second half. But if you also remember, I didn't see any design runs. There was no escaping of the pocket, and if he was going to go down, he made sure to get on that ground quick before he took a hit. Hell, if we're really being honest, even if Alabama gets an off night from Justin Fields, it is going to be considered a good game for most quarterbacks. However, in the end, I have Alabama winning this game by the score of 41-38. I think their defensive line will win just enough battles against Ohio State's offensive line. The wide receiver core will be too much for the Buckeye secondary, and I see that you see the point differential, so I'm going to call my shot and do y'all one better. And hell, since this is the 2020 season, Alabama's Will Reichard will hit a 40-yard field goal that will be the difference in the game. Because an Alabama kicker hitting the game-winning field goal would be the most 2020 thing ever. And I'm going to leave y'all with that. So, let me know your thoughts are in the game in the comment section below. Give me your score prediction and also tell me why your respective team is going to win the game. Please give the video a like, and if you love college football as much as I do, hit that subscribe button if you want to stay updated with the latest previews and the occasional highlights. Thank you for watching this season. Lord willing, I'll be around next year. Take care.